There's a sad kind of symmetry that the last time I saw my friend was the same place as one of the first times I saw her. I'll get to the last time too soon, but let me tell you the beginning of the story. She and her husband were new friends. 10 years older than us, these welcoming, proper grown ups had invited us for a meal with another couple, and I'm sure they were there to lubricate the wheels of conversation in case we turned out to be crappy company. We were a bit uncertain in a new village and not really used to dinner parties as much as pizza and beers with elbows on IKEA coffee tables and paper towels for plates. This was a whole different kettle of fish, and I'd stood in front of the wine section in the supermarket for an awkwardly long time, trying to gauge the correct amount to spend on a bottle and what the difference between a Merlot and a Malbec might be. I reckon the store CCTV guy thought he had a malfunctioning camera. But we were there, round the table, set with cloth napkins and lit by candles, music in the background, and ready laughter and acceptance in the air. The food was delicious, as we would come to expect from that table. Roast lamb studded with garlic and rosemary, dauphinoise potatoes and greens, with homemade bread for mopping up sauce, and so much good wine. The friends there with us were clearly part of the family, him half Italian, a bass player in a Bruce Springsteen tribute band, her half Indian, generous and gorgeous. And at the time, she was a drug representative selling Viagra. They always had the best quality pens with a nice weighty heft to them. It was a heady thing being accepted into their company. Not great for either the waistline or for the liver, but so good for the soul. She was smart, a PhD with a love of science and art, both of which I shared, and she loved to talk about God and faith and church, and just as much about sex and periods and breastfeeding. She was the first woman I knew who talked earthily about how it was to be female, to desire, to bleed, to give birth. In the true sense of the word, she was deeply sensual, loving gorgeous scented soaps and lotions, and I still spray on her favourite Clarins perfume when I walk past the concession in a department store. If you wore something made of soft wool or velvet, you'd soon feel her hand on your arm dreamily stroking you, and that was more comforting and less creepy than it sounds. She was quick with a kiss or a hug anytime you needed one, and sometimes when you didn't. We had a matching history of being smart, shy, book-loving wee girls who would turn to stories to escape the world we didn't quite feel we fitted. When a good cry was needed by our 10-year-old selves, we had both turned to the Narnia stories, and as grown-up women, we could still conjure tears by reminding ourselves that Aslan was not a tame lion after all. Both of us loved Tolkien's Middle-earth, discovering early in our friendship a shared annual rereading of The Lord of the Rings and a serious crush on Aragorn. Over the years, there were more dinners, lots more wine, and many late night conversations about faith and sex and God. She introduced me to Richard Rohr and Barbara Brown Taylor and Anne Lamott, and I introduced her to an Irish poet called Podrick. There was always more to read and more to learn. Difficult questions were her favourite ones, and she didn't tolerate lazy answers. We loved her kids, my husband and I, first as teenagers in our youth group, and then as adults. One nannied for our children, instituting crazy Fridays when we'd arrive home from work to find them all sugar high on sweets from the corner shop, half watching a movie in a room that looked as though a tornado had visited central Scotland. It wasn't all wine glasses and heroic tales, mind you. Somewhere in the middle of our story, we lost one another. She was treated badly by someone we both knew, and I didn't listen well enough to her story. I wasn't able to see beyond my experience to hers, and in the process, I hurt her deeply. That one's not my story to tell, only that my part in it is something I'll always regret. Then came one of those diagnoses you dread, when a lump turns out to be the kind that's trying to kill you, and surgery and radiotherapy and the chemo that made her hair fall out, and a reprieve for a while, and then the unexpected scan result that signalled that this wasn't going to have a happy ending. I spent an afternoon sitting on a stool at her feet talking about the thing which had broken our friendship. I cried a lot, and so did she. I said sorry for the not listening and the not believing, and she forgave me. And she apologised too, although I'm still not sure what for. It was a miracle, I'm pretty sure. Not the cancer healing kind we prayed for, but a deep magic one of another sort. I think Aslan would have approved. It felt like we both buried our heads and our hands in his mane, like Lucy and Susan when they met him on the morning of his resurrection. We were brave, the two of us, that day, and as free as C.S. Lewis's storybook girls getting to ride on the back of the great lion. But time was short, and so the last time I saw her, that lovely dining table was gone, replaced by a hospital bed raised up incongruously high so that as she lay propped on those white pillows, we were shoulder to shoulder. She was drowsy with the morphine by then, sleeping when I arrived, but surfacing a little as I took her hands in both of mine. Her hands were always lovely, long-fingered and nails elegantly shaped, and they seemed the only part of her unchanged. I cried a bit and read a benediction from John O'Donoghue's lovely book because I had no good words of my own. The room shimmered. It felt holy, that thin place between this world and the next that Celtic mystics tell of. And after a while, I heard her children arrive, and not wanting to make my grief an extra burden for them, I leant in to kiss her cheek and say goodbye for the last time. She woke then for just a moment, and meeting my eyes said something so tender and lovely that I can't tell it here. I need to keep that just for me. And I slipped out of the front door and home. Her life was ridiculously, unfairly short, and to be honest, I'm still bloody angry about that, for her and for her family and for me. And I really miss my friend. I don't know for sure what comes after these last times. I don't know whether there'll be a boat sailing to Grey Havens or a coracle paddle through sweet water to Aslan's country. But whatever there is, I hope it includes roast lamb, red wine, good words, great music, and plenty of dirty jokes. And perhaps, if we're lucky, Aragorn might be there too. And I'm sure we can work out some kind of harem arrangement.
Oh, Gyda, why did you do this to me? That was just amazing. So, oh, just brilliant. Are you really? You know, I said this to Catherine as well previously. I just love it when people bring someone alive to a group of people who have never known that person, and we can kind of appreciate what a force of life and joy they were. That was just, you break my heart. I'm more used to you making me laugh with your hilarious stories, but that was fantastic. And you're still in touch with that family?
Yeah. They live just down the road. Her husband lives just down the road, and a wonderful family. She was an amazing woman.
Well, look, thank you so much for sharing that with us. Really appreciate it.